thanks for attending tonight's event, Parent Council Communications Training. Tonight presenting, you'll have myself, Leanne. I'm the chair of Glasgow City Parents Group. We have Kathryn Farrow on the call, who is Quality Improvement Officer from Glasgow City Council, and we've got Fiona, who is Senior Communications Officer for Glasgow City Council, and both Kathryn and Fiona work out of the kind of Education Services Department, so that's why it's relevant that they're here. Just want to kind of let you know what the format's going to be tonight. So we'll have Kathryn that will just do her bit briefly first, and then we'll move on to Fiona and then myself. Throughout the entire presentation, feel free to use the Q&A toolbar to put any questions that maybe pop into your head as we go along. So if you just kind of look at the bottom of your toolbar on Zoom, whatever device it is you're using, there's a Q&A function, and you can put your comment or your question in there. What we'll do is we'll just let them build up until the end of the session once we've done our presentations, and then we'll run through the questions. What we tend to do with our webinars is answer them live. So Kathryn will read the questions out, and whoever it's relative to, then they'll answer it there and then. I also want to remind you all that we're recording tonight, so don't worry too much if you're kind of just listening and you wish you'd maybe taken some notes. We'll be recording it like we do with some of our webinars, and we'll upload it onto our YouTube channel. So if there's anything that you've missed, then you can kind of look back at it. So I'm just going to pass straight on to Kathryn, and we'll just get started. And like I say, it'll be Kathryn, and then she'll pass on to Fiona, and then pass on to myself, and then we'll deal with the questions from there. On you go, Kathryn.
Okay, nice to have everybody here. I guess there's a large audience that we can't see, which is good to have so many people coming to these sessions. I am going to be very brief tonight, and then I'm going to put my video off, and video and audio will go off for me, and I'll watch the questions. So that's going to be mainly my role. But I want to start off by just setting the scene and talking about some of the issues that I deal with on a very regular basis in respect of parent councils and communication issues. So I'm going to start off first of all, just reminding everybody that parent councils are independent groups that make their own rules, you know, and those rules are laid down in a parent council constitution. One of the issues that comes very readily is whether parent councils are allowed to have certain forms of communication set up so that they can link in with the communities that they represent. Often they come and say the head teacher won't allow us to have Facebook, or the head teacher won't allow us to have a Facebook group, to have Facebook or to have a WhatsApp group. Now, the head teacher, it's not the head teacher's decision to make, because as I said, the parent council is independent. They're a group, you know, it's governed by the parents and represents the parents in the school. So those rules are made by the group on behalf of all parents. So it's not up to the head teacher to decide how the parent council operates. But I think if I could share with you some of the concerns that come from head teachers, then you'll understand why head teachers often make those statements about not wanting their parent councils to have this type of communication. So generally, when things go wrong, you have lots of people browsing social media. So if it goes wrong on social media, people don't often engage with the detail enough to determine whether it's a parent council or whether it's a school. And there's always that worry about the reputational damage to a school if there's a battle being fought on a parent council Facebook page, or if parents have fallen out on WhatsApp, although WhatsApp is fortunately closed, but often reference is made to that on other forms of social media that can be picked up by people like journalists, because often journalists are looking at social media to get to find out where there's a story. So people don't always make that distinction between a parent council and a school, and head teachers are rightly concerned sometimes about the reputational damage to their school, which no school ever wants to risk their reputation. But the good news is there's ways to prevent it. And I have found from experience that people are often putting policies, the right kinds of policies into place after they have a problem. What I would advise you all to do is get all of this sorted out before there are any problems. So when you're looking at your constitution, there's other things that you can look at that would help you to keep the parent council on the right track and actually to forge a really good partnership with the head teacher, with the other senior staff in the school, and thereby your parent council can actually become a trusted source of communication for that school. So, you know, get your constitution sorted out first and foremost, because it's your rules and it's how you operate. Today, I've had inquiries from parent councils and from schools. They can't find the constitution. They're coming to me to see if I've got it, and I don't have everybody's on file. So if you don't have one and you want help to get one, I can help you with that. And we have samples that we shared. Leanne has a lot of material that we shared earlier in the year as part of a similar course. So we can get all of that material out to you. So look at somebody else's constitution and just tweak it to suit your own circumstances. But if you need help, I've gone on to Zoom meetings or Teams meetings with parent councils to help them get that sorted out, because I can, you know, cut through that pretty quick and get you to the place where you have a good constitution. When you're doing your constitution, it's always a good idea to have a code of conduct for members so that people that are joining your parent council know what the expectations are in terms of how people are expected to behave on the group. So again, we've got lots of samples of that. Recently, parent councils have also started to produce social media policies because they're all using social media, or they want to use social media, and they want to make sure that it's actually done in the correct way. So a social media policy is another good idea. Data protection, if you are, you know, gathering data for any purpose, you should also have a data protection policy. GDPR sits with that. So we have got the samples of those, we can give them to you, and you need to just discuss them first, you know, first and foremost, so that all of your members are signed up to it. Now, if everybody's signed up to that and you've got your head teacher at your meeting, seeing that that's how things are going to work, the confidence increases, and a head teacher is not going to be making statements of, you know, I don't want you to have a Facebook page, or, you know, I'm going to stop you having a Facebook page. When it's done responsibly, it's actually been really helpful. And during COVID, it has been really helpful to have those strong partnerships between schools and parent councils, because when classes are sent home to isolate, which unfortunately we've had to do during the past few months, the jungle drums bang and, you know, lots of rumours start to go out into communities. And if the school can actually give the accurate information about what's happening and can share, you know, some of the, you know, the accurate, you know, the facts about things, the parent council has actually helped in a number of schools to make sure that we get those messages out to the parent body. But that's in schools where that trust has been formed between the parent council and the school staff. And generally in those cases, they've all got the policies in place and everybody knows that it's going to, you know, it's going to be done properly. So that's all I'm really going to say about this, because others like Leanne and Fiona will both pick up on some of those issues as they go through, and we'll probably do them in more detail. But I think it's just really saying, you know, get everything sorted out ahead of the problems, and you'll get everybody's trust, and it can be a really good way to reach lots of people and to start to hear from the parent community that you serve on a parent council. Okay, so I'll hand over to, I think it's Fiona that's going to go next, and I'll come off and deal with the questions.
Thanks, Kathryn, and thanks, Leanne. Yeah, I suppose what I thought I would do is just a quick introduction. I'm Fiona Ross. I'm the Senior Comms Officer for Glasgow City Council, and I've covered education for, oh gosh, nearly 13, 14 years now. So I suppose, as you can imagine, there's never a dull moment. Largest local authority in Scotland, and over 300 education establishments, nurseries, primaries and secondary schools. So Leanne had asked me along tonight I have a tendency to ramble, so I'm banking on Leanne to pull me and rein me back in, and tell me to be quiet. And I suppose the whole point of tonight was to discuss my role within the council, but also how Leanne, Kathryn and myself are trying to develop relationships, a bit like what Kathryn was saying there, that actually where communication falls down is where there's not that trust, and where there's not accurate information, and timely information as well. Leanne and I were having a chat this afternoon. One of the sort of like the key principles within Glasgow is nurturing. We very much talk about a nurturing city and a nurturing approach. So I had a wee look, and one of the principles is that all behaviour is communication, and it's so correct. You know, if I had £1 for every time that we've had to deal with media inquiries, and it's because there's been a breakdown in either communication or relationship between a parent or a family and a school. So I suppose that I'm on here to make my job a lot easier, because if we can actually build those good relationships and work together, then actually I suppose the end result is that I won't then have to deal with the media inquiries. But as I say, I'm the senior comms officer. I manage the press office for my sins. We're based in the city chambers, well, normally based in the city chambers. Like a lot of people within the council, we've been working from home since the beginning of lockdown in March. Although like education officers, I'm trying to go into the office as much as possible, because that's a good way to support our schools. You know, head teachers, school staff, teachers and pupils as well are in school, so we need to be leading by example. So within our team, there's a press officer for each department. So as I say, I cover education, and actually over the years we've tried really hard really to build this relationship with the parents group. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Leanne and her colleagues on the committee. You know, because actually Leanne's been the one that has been the forefront of reaching out. So I think that can only be a benefit to us. And something that we do want to get across is that, you know, that we are trying to be as open and transparent with the information that we are giving out. Now, sometimes that's not always the information that our parents want to hear. You know, there's some difficult decisions that are taken at corporate level. So really what my job is trying to do is to manage that flow of communication and to be as open and transparent. But actually what we found over the past few months, and certainly through the pandemic, being able to speak to Leanne and as many parents as possible, that's the only way that we are going to find out what's happening down at school level, because there's nothing worse than people being dictated to. And that, I suppose that brings me back to what I was saying earlier about all behaviour is communication. You know, we all want to be accepted, we all want to be listened and heard, and that's where I think that this relationship that we're developing is something that can only benefit both the council but also the parent councils as well. And one thing, and I don't know if anybody on here tonight was part of we had engagement sessions before the return to school in August, because that was a very anxious time for parents. You know, for so long the messaging was stay home, keep your children at home, and then all of a sudden, and it was in the space of a couple of weeks, the decision from Scottish Government to open schools. You know, so we totally understand that was a huge hurdle, and it was something that we had to manage in the right way. And the only way we were going to do that was to listen to pupils, but also to listen to parents, to listen to staff. So the sort of like the parental engagement sessions that Leanne hosted back, I think it was June, seems like a lifetime ago now, Leanne. They were very, very interesting, and certainly from you know, Maureen McKenna, the Director of Education, you know, was put through her paces, and quite rightly so. You know, there was lots of questions, there was lots of anxious sort of like fears about going back to school, having been away for so long. So it's about that two-way process of communication, it would be very easy for us to sit in head office and just sort of push messaging out. But if it's not the right message, and if it's not targeted in such a way, then it's not going to, you know, it's a bit of a scattergun approach. We have to be engaging with folk, not just dictating to them. So actually those engagement sessions were really helpful, because actually what it did was it influenced a lot of the decisions that were taken prior to the schools going back. And that's something that's very important, and that's where we need your help. And certainly with Leanne and the committee over the past couple of months, there was a document that was put out. It was the 3 Rs document, and it was basically the Education Services Recovery document. We were able to share that with Leanne well before it was published, to sort of say, you know, have we hit the right tone? Is there the correct information? You know, because it's very easy for us to think that we know what we want to communicate, but is it going to be delivered in the right way? Is it going to be accepted in the way that we want it to be accepted? So the best way to do that is almost to have a kind of a focus group. And I think that's where that we see this relationship developing, and it goes back to what Kathryn was mentioning earlier. You know, the parent council relationship with the head teachers, you know, the rules and regulations, we have no authority over you. I can't sit here tonight and say to you, you know, like, please don't go to the media if you feel aggrieved about something, or if there's something upsetting you, because sometimes parents and families see that the only way out of a situation is to go to the media. So what I would very much like to do is let's not let it get to that stage. Let's have that dialogue. Let's try and work it out and resolve it before it gets to that. So that's why we want to be as open and transparent as possible. And I mentioned the 3 Rs earlier in the document that Leanne very kindly helped us once it was written, and Leanne and our parents were able to influence, and we changed some of the messaging in that on the back of that. And that's where I think Kathryn mentioned it too, that the role of the parent council is so important in the school community. And it's something that we've used during lockdown, and you know, we've touched on it. I think I get an hourly phone call from the media at the moment about classes that are having to self-isolate, and journalists looking for information on positive cases. Now that's something that we've taken a decision as a council that I'm not going to confirm the number of positive cases in a school, because actually I wouldn't have confirmed the privacy, you know, like the personal or the medical information of our staff or our young people, children and young people prior to COVID, and I'm not going to start doing that now. I think, sorry, I was just having problems there with my computer. So as I say, as an example, one of the schools, there was a lot of rumours going around in the local community at a school, that again, if we don't get information and communications out quickly enough to families, that's how the rumour mill does start, and we totally understand that. But sometimes it's a feeling of not, we can't win. We put out a parents' letter one Saturday night to try and sort of like ease those anxieties within a community. We worried half of the parents because they felt that a text going out on a Saturday night was actually caused more damage than good. But actually, I stand by the fact that we had to address the rumours that were going around in the local community. So it was a bit of a judgment call. And actually, the media had the wrong information. And again, sometimes we would ask like for some help with that sort of messaging in the media. And in this case, we asked for a comment from the chair of the parent council to be able to give that to the media. Because again, it's sometimes seen as spin if it's coming from the council spokesperson, but actually when it's coming from a parent, it's more believable, and it goes back to that trust. And sometimes it's so much better targeted communications coming from the parent council or coming from the school, and not coming from a faceless organisation that sometimes the council can be seen as. Leanne's obviously going to touch on social media and digital channels later on. You know, we get asked a lot to push out messaging from the council's Twitter or Facebook account. But sometimes we have to sort of say, well, actually, no, that's not the correct communications channel. It would be so much better. Some school communities, you know, still use, I used to call it school bag post. You know, there's different ways that work for different school communities. So sometimes letters going out to parents, you know, the schools are using apps, schools are using YouTube. There's so many different ways now that we can communicate with parents and with our different sort of like audiences, that actually, again, it's much better for that to be channeled through a school. And I think that's where the Parent Council plays a really valuable role as well, because again, parents and your families will trust the messaging that's coming from yourself. And that's why it's so important to get your code of conduct correct, because you can then stick to that. But I'm not going to take away from Leanne, because Leanne's going to cover that side of the business. You know, so I think again, by doing these types of sessions, you know, when you read in the paper, you know, council spokeswoman, you now know that there's an actual person behind that, and there's a face to the name. So it does work both ways. And however, I mentioned earlier, but sometimes you know, what we're pushing out from the centre, people are not happy about it, you know, when there's difficult budget decisions to be made, you know, for services and different things. You know, I totally understand that that's going to affect families, it's going to affect real people, and sometimes that's very difficult across to journalists. You know, just league tables is a bit of a bugbear of ours, because actually, you know, these league tables where our schools are, you know, sometimes, you know, 450th out of 600 in the council, that doesn't tell you the whole picture behind what those figures. Exam results are just one aspect of a school community. And it's so difficult to try and say to newspapers that there's real people, there's pupils behind those figures, and there's school communities behind that negative story that you're writing about. And that seems to, or tends to be, forgotten sometimes. So we're also there in head office to advocate on behalf of your school communities as well. And that's something that we feel really passionate about, is we have got really, really good schools in Glasgow, and that's taken a long time to turn some of the negative aspects. And it's sort of old-fashioned historical stigmatism against Glasgow. So we try our best to turn that around. And I suppose one of the things that I wanted to ask tonight as well is that I can only a lot of my job at the moment is reactive to the emergency situation and the virus. But what we have to do as well is we have to give hope, and there's so much good news out across the city. So I want, you know, whether that's we channel it through Leanne. Sorry to give you more work, Leanne. I know you work extremely hard on this, but and it's something that when I do my presentation to head teachers, you know, sometimes there's a lot of criticism. Well, you know, some schools get a lot more attention than others, but that's because they come to me. That's because they give me the information that we're able to then pitch to a newspaper. So you can almost, if I can ask you to be our sort of like, you know, our eyes and ears on the ground as well, because we would like to get, you know, we'd like to sort of like push back in some of the stories about COVID. COVID's going to be around for a while. We know that there's positive cases in a lot of our communities. Again, we know that. But what we also know is the amazing work that is going on in our schools, the amazing work of our staff, but equally the resilience and the passion of our parents and our carers and our families. And I would love to be able to get that across. So that's something that I think over the next few months that we can work together on. But I suppose, you know, I mentioned earlier about a quote from the Parent Council. Again, I can't sit here and ask you not to go to the media, to come to me first. I would love that. It would make my job an awful lot easier. But sometimes, you know, going to the media is not the answer. You know, there's always ways to resolve something. So that is about that building up of that relationship between yourselves and the school, because that partnership working, that the school needs a good and effective parent council to be able to run efficiently. Because actually a school's more than just the building and the staff in it, it's the whole school community, which goes back to actually a lot of our nurturing principles as well. But when I phone schools up, I sort of call myself the prophet of doom. As soon as they hear it's Fiona Ross, the education press officer, it's like, oh no, what's happened? You know, so it is about the, you know, there's been a lot of, I actually get more of a kick keeping a story out of a newspaper than I do of a story appearing, because as you can imagine, we got a lot of inaccurate stories put to us on a daily basis. And there's always two sides to every story, and I totally understand that. And I hope that when I'm doing my job, I think about the other side, because if a family or if somebody is going to the newspaper about a story, it's because they're upset, they're angry that maybe that there's a decision that has been taken about their child and they don't believe it's the correct decision. So I never forget that. I don't see parents as a sort of like a faceless audience. I always try, and I would hope the members of my team do that too. You know, we think about the bigger picture, and we'll always try and work out, you know, the reason why they've gone back. And that goes back to my initial thing, that all behaviour is communication. And actually, if we don't get the communication right, it's very difficult to pull back a story, and it just snowballs and out of control. So I suppose, I'm sorry, Leanne, I've rambled on, I think, for so long, and I know there'll probably be a lot of questions. So it was really just to sort of say that I'm not only here to, you know, my job's not just about the reputation of the council. It's also about the reputation ultimately of our schools and nurseries, but it's also about that sort of like whole school approach or whole city approach. You know, there are a lot of establishments across the city, and sometimes we do have to focus on the bigger picture. But what I would really like to do with this developing relationship is bring it down into more of a sort of a community level, because I think there's so many positive and good stories that we can share, which will show Glasgow, and especially Glasgow schools and families, in the light that they deserve. And it is, you know, we are a strong advocate in Glasgow of pupil power, but I think that we are also can be seen as, you know, championing parent power, and that's where I'm going to leave it.
Thanks, Fiona. That's a good segue. I'm going to share my screen for my part, folks, because it is discussing social media. So it's a bit more of a practical aspect. So I thought it would maybe be best to kind of have some slides up for you to reference. So I'm kind of just going to go through what we do, I suppose, as an example at Glasgow City Parents Group. I would like to think, hopefully, we do it well. And that's probably part of the reason you are on here watching this, because we've done our job well. But also to give you a bit of background, that my actual day job that I get paid for is in marketing, so I suppose I'm at a wee bit of an advantage there, and it does come in very handy when I'm doing my work for Glasgow City Parents Group. So I'm going to just go through the example of our group, and not that you would probably think it now, but actually back in February, me and Kathryn were literally at the point where we're going to hang up our boots on this group. I have been the chair for a couple of years now, and there wasn't much engagement. I was trying, we had social media, I wasn't posting a lot probably, there wasn't a lot of engagement back, we were having our face-to-face events, there wasn't a lot of attendance at that. And by last Christmas, me and Kathryn kind of got to the point where we felt well, what's the point if nobody's really that interested? We feel like we're kind of talking to a brick wall. And literally in February, we had a meeting scheduled where we were going to make the decision to cut the group, and we were just going to cut our ties. And then COVID appeared, lockdown happened, and I started using our social media channels as a kind of information sharing. I wasn't really doing it with any sort of agenda to that. It was just a case of, if I seen a useful link, I would share it. And it suddenly, our engagement levels just started shooting upwards because parents were anxious. They wanted information. They wanted to know what was happening with school closures. And as you can see from some of the figures that I've put on the screen just now, our kind of engagement levels shot through the roof. So at that point, myself and Kathryn, we kept that date that we had, that we were going to meet and discuss to hang up our boots in the group, but it turned into a very different meeting, because it turned out to be, actually, we're now getting a really good audience for this group, and we could really use this to our advantage for parents and for the schools. So this really example is to show you, not expecting your parent council to maybe get to this level. If you do get to this level of engagement, then fair play to you, tell me your secret. But it's to give you an example of how you can build up your parental engagement. And I think now, because a lot of people are turning to digital technology to engage, now's the best time to do this. And as you can see for this slide, when I was running the group, it was literally me on the group. There was no group, it was just me. What actually came out of those parental engagement sessions that Fiona referenced was we ended up with quite a number of volunteers who wanted to be part of the group. And we've ended up kind of whittling that down, and we've now had a core group of volunteers that have been working constantly on this group since June. And it's quite a solid running group. And like Fiona said, Education Services then use Glasgow City Parents Group as their core focus group. Obviously, then we'll send out kind of consultation wider when it's required. But it just shows you as well, it's a good opportunity for you as a parent council to even try and recruit new members, because you've got higher engagement levels. So whilst that might look like big numbers there, it's just to try and give you an idea that it can be done. We've went from a really non-existent group, which sometimes can happen with parent councils. I'm part of a parent council. I've run parent councils where it's like 2 people. Now's your opportunity to get engaged with your parents, get the good news stories out there, give them the benefits of joining the parent council, and get them involved. So this is just kind of telling you the other elements that we've brought into it as Glasgow City Parents Group. We now have a newsletter that either some of you guys will probably already be receiving it. If you don't, whenever you sign up for our events, we normally put you onto your mailing list. You can unsubscribe, obviously, any time, but you'll get all the kind of news coming through from us. We've recently set up a YouTube channel, which is working very well, because that's where we'll put the recording from tonight on. And it's just another way of engaging with parents, because not everybody obviously can make it on the date and time that you set. Put that on YouTube, then that's always there for people to reference and for you to share your social media channels. And again, it's another good point of engagement. We did a Q&A with Maureen that we recorded and we put on there. So it's just another good way of sharing information. And I just want to highlight that bottom bullet point. The reason this group has become the success that it is because we have built up a really good relationship with both Kathryn and Fiona and Maureen and many other departments now at Glasgow City Council and many other external bodies like Police Scotland, for instance. And that just comes over time. It comes through you producing good communications to your audience, whether it is just your school or your wider community. Then your school and external bodies and higher up will see they're good communicators. We can trust them, and that trust just will build with you and your head teacher. And what you will find is your head teacher will probably share information with you, whereas you maybe in the past were having to go to the head teacher and ask them to answer your questions. Once you start building that trust, they might come to you actually and be giving you more information rather than you kind of chasing it. And that's the situation that's happened with Glasgow City Parents Group. We're now in a really fortunate position that Fiona and Kathryn and even Maureen will email me without me asking them, or they'll approach us first and ask us for their opinions on things. So it ends up a really good position to be in. So these are all your common kind of social media channels that are out there. There's further ones than that, but these are probably the most common ones. What I would say is that from a parent council point of view, you're probably looking at maybe Twitter, WhatsApp, Facebook, and possibly YouTube. I don't particularly think Snapchat or TikTok is your audience, because Snapchat and TikTok are predominantly for teens to young adults in their 20s, 30s maybe. You're maybe not going to hit your audience there of parents and families. So that, I was just kind of putting these up here though to show you like the most common social media, but I'd say probably from a parent council point of view, the most common forms of social media that you're probably going to use is Twitter, WhatsApp and Facebook. WhatsApp, we probably almost all of us use it in a parent council. I think I've yet to maybe come across a parent council that doesn't have a WhatsApp group, or even a couple of parents that they use WhatsApp for. Please remember though that it's still classed as social media, and if you are keeping people's phone numbers for that, you still need to kind of think about your data protection policy and GDPR, because at the end of the day, if you're using that for your parent council side of things, it's not just like jumping on a group with your mates and sending stuff. And also your code of conduct should cover your WhatsApp. I know it's maybe not thought of as social media because it's not like a public forum, but it still comes under the social media banner. So I'm not going to go into WhatsApp too much because chances are you are already using it, you know how it works. There's not that many functions to it. There's not a lot special that you can do with it. But I'm going to just touch on Twitter and Facebook, which are probably the most channels that we would use. These are the pros and cons of using both. What I find when I speak to many parent councils and being on a parent council is that most parent councils would probably flock to Twitter because that's where the schools are. Just about all Glasgow schools are probably on Twitter because I see them all coming up in the newsfeed for Glasgow City Parent Twitter. Schools are probably a wee bit more risk averse of wanting to be on Facebook because it needs a bit more management. Like as you can see for the pros and cons, people can maybe get into more of a discussion sometimes on Facebook. There's a lot more shared on it. But what I would like to say to you all is that remember what Kathryn said, the social media decision and what channels that you want to use are entirely down to you as a parent council. You don't want to though go away and set stuff up and it breaks down the relationship between you and your school. Obviously you would like the school's blessing and you would like to work together, but that's really about you. Again, I'll go back to building that trust that the head teacher trusts that you would manage those social channels in the correct way. So everybody seems to, all the parent councils in schools seem to be on Twitter because it's easy, it's straightforward, all the other schools are on there. There's not much on Twitter that can go wrong unless you start going down like the politics role and things like that, then you're opening a minefield. But what you need to remember is parents, predominantly parents and carers, are not on Twitter. Your key audience is more than likely going to be on Facebook. So see when you're sending out all those lovely tweets about what the parent council are doing, maybe have a wee think about who's actually seeing this. It's great that the school's seeing it, it's great that other maybe third sector organisations are seeing it, other schools are seeing what your school's doing and you're promoting it. That's all brilliant, there's nothing wrong with that. But are your parents actually the ones that are seeing that information? So maybe have a think about that and look down your followers. And what I would say is consider, if you don't already have a Facebook page or group, then please consider opening one. This is the difference between a page and a group on Facebook. What I would say is, again, if it's going back to that kind of risk-averse behaviour, I think a lot of parent councils and some schools are on Facebook. They tend to go straight away for the group option, and they tend to go straight away for the private group option because they've got a bit more control about that then. It's reducing the risk of kind of lively debates maybe, and it just seems like the less risky option. What I would say to you is that if you're going to jump down that route, you're kind of actually closing yourself off a wee bit. You'll notice our page is a page, and it's a page that everybody sees. You don't even have to like it or follow it to be able to view it. The reason it's a page is because we want our information to be able to be seen by many. We want them to be able to share some of our information. So if we've got an event, we want Facebook people to share that so that it spreads. If you're on a closed group, even if it's a public group, that if you're putting out, for instance, say you're putting out some information about a school sports day and you put it on your Facebook group, your parents are not going to be able to kind of share that across Facebook as such if you're in a private group. Of course, they could take a screenshot and share it, but it just limits the audience that you can reach. Also, when you're on a group, it's a bit more difficult to try and find a group's profile. So when you start searching up Facebook for them, it can be quite difficult to come across them because they won't have a tag the way a page would. So that's just to kind of give you the difference between a page and a group, and you might want to consider having an open page. Obviously, you would need to moderate it a wee bit more, but please don't be worried about that. You would actually think that us as a group, Glasgow City Parents Group, being across Glasgow, obviously posting out some messages that are coming from education services, compared to a parent council, you would probably think we'd maybe get quite a bit of abuse, or we'd get some profanity, or like some debates that are inappropriate. I can actually tell you that there's been one discussion that I had to shut down. That was a way back in April or something. It was about Black Lives Matter. That was the only time I had to kind of step in and say enough. I've not actually blocked MD from the page because there's been nobody that's got to that stage, and I actually can't think of any other like horrible examples where I've been like, oh, I need to kind of get that off. So I wouldn't shy away from having a Facebook page too much because it's actually not as scary as it sounds, in all honesty. I want to just highlight to you though that no matter what way you go, what route you go down, and this is not just predominantly for Facebook, no matter what kind of social media you use, please take a few minutes to actually go through your privacy settings and just check that things are in place that you want to be in place. So for instance, on our page, on our Facebook page, I have the profanity level set to strong. So I actually wouldn't allow anybody to post on it. I've also set it so that you cannot get visitors like posting on your page, so they wouldn't be able to actually say like post their own business venture on the page or anything. The visitors posts are turned off so that all the main posts would come from us as a page, but people can obviously comment under it. So you just need to take a while to go through the privacy settings and security settings and set it to the different levels or different settings that suit you as a group. From this slide, can I just bring your attention to that bottom paragraph, because I actually just found this out when I was kind of researching this, and I just want to make you aware of it. That when you have your Facebook group, and say you had it public and something's happened, you're like, oh, I'm going to turn that Facebook group private because I don't really want I don't really want MD to see these comments or these pictures. See, once you change your group to a private group, there's no going back. You can't then go public. And that's because of data protection. Once you go into a private group, then all your members that are on that, you're basically securing their data. And so you would need to get permission from every single one of those people to be able to then share that they were a group member. So that's why Facebook has set it that way. So just remember that if you set up a Facebook group and you put it private, it's not like further down the line, if it's all going well, you're thinking, oh, I'll give it a try and then I can make it public. You cannot do that. So that's why you need to kind of think hard. Do you really want to go down that route? Because when you go down into a private group, it makes it a bit more difficult for your parents to engage with you, because they actually need to physically come and join your group because it's private. So that's why I'm a wee bit against that, but each to their own and whatever works for you. In terms of levels of engagement, to keep the content, so content is like what you're posting, your photos, your stories, your statements, your links, anything at all that you post, it's referenced as content. The way to make your content a wee bit more engaging for people, rather than just sticking out a post of text, you know yourself, if you're scrolling through any social media and it's just a bit of text, you're not always going to stop and read it. So what we in kind of marketing terms, we would always advise anybody doing any sort of social media to add an image to their post. Doesn't have to be an actual image of people or kids or anything. It can be a cartoon, it can be a bit of text image, something. It's just a bit more eye-catching when you are scrolling down a news feed on whatever channel you use. So that's actually the second slide, I should say. So the tool that I regularly use, and it's great, it's free, it's online, it's called Canva. You can make all sorts of your own images. You can do, this presentation was on Canva. You can make GIFs, you can you make videos, you can do PDFs. Like it's a great tool, and it's really good for just making up a wee image to attach to your post so that it's a bit more eye-catching and you don't need to worry about permissions and etc. And if you don't have an image that's relevant, you can just make up something. I'll go back to the first square. When you're posting any kind of documents, or if it's a web link and it's really long, this is probably more useful on Twitter, because as we know, Twitter, you only get 140 characters. You can obviously add on for a second tweet, etc., but it fills up really quickly. So if you've got a big long web link that you're adding in there that you want to share, it will use up your characters really quickly. There are what's called link shorteners online. They're like free, you can just Google them and they'll come up. All you do is you paste your long link into the box and you hit shorten, and it will give you a shorter link, and it can actually reduce a link, say, that's got 80 characters. It will reduce it down to a link that's maybe got about 12 characters. So it gives you then a lot more space to be able to add into that post, and it doesn't take up all of your Twitter then. So that Bitly and short URL is probably the most common used ones, but there's all different ones. So if you just Google like URL shortener or link shortener, you'll see them all come up, and then you just post your link in it and it will change it over for you. So really useful to not use up your space. Back to the next square again. When you're if you're using video, obviously I would imagine that most folk probably use their phone to record their video, or like if you're on a Zoom meeting, then you can record some video on that. A really good free video editing tool that I use, again, because as Glasgow City Parents Group, we don't have any sort of budget for anything, so everything I do is for free, gracias. I do not pay a penny for it. So Clipchamp is a really good video editing tool. It's dead straightforward to use. You can add all different media into it. You can add music on. So see all the YouTube videos that I've been doing for Glasgow City Parents Group, that's what I edited it through. So there's no need to be spending money on any editing tools or anything. There might be other ones out there, but I just find Clipchamp is really easy and straightforward to use. I don't like too many options. I like to just go on there, hit a few buttons, and that's it, done. And then at the bottom, you've got Biteable is another good tool as well. There is a paid version, but there's a free version. And if you're trying to maybe get round the fact that we can't go out and take videos of kids or videos of other parents, but you've got a wee message that you want to put out there or something, you can actually create like animation videos through Biteable. And so that could still create whatever content it is you're looking to create, but without having to use anybody's actual image in real life. And again, just Google these things and they'll come up online, and it just makes for a wee bit more engaging content on your parent council channels rather than just sticking out a kind of post, because engaging content is where folk will keep coming back to your social media to check what you're posting. I know that a lot of people think, oh, but that just sounds like so much hard work. Like I would need to be sitting on Facebook or Twitter all day and sharing stuff. No, you don't. There is scheduling posts for both sites. So what you can do with that, and I tend to do this as well most of the time. See if I've got like an event that I'm running and I know for the next 2 weeks, I want to really hammer that out there to get sign-ups. I am actually not sitting on my mobile phone posting that like 3 times a day. I tend to then go on to TweetDeck for Twitter, Facebook publishing tools, and you can schedule those posts. So what you can do, because I think some parent councils maybe think doing social media is a lot of work. It can be at first until you get used to it all. See, the more you start using it, the more you get used to it. But these are great tools that what you can do, like say on a Sunday night, if you've got an hour, you could sit for an hour, schedule stuff for the week, and then you just let that run, and that's you. You don't need to post anything else for the rest of the week. They're dead straightforward. So you'll see on the Twitter one, the blue section that you see, that's where you would put your Twitter message in there. You can still put hashtags, and you can still add images, and then you just pick your day and your time that you want that to go out. The Facebook one, it's the blue button that you see kind of relatively in the middle of that. It says create post. It comes up create post, and it's actually set up the exact same way you would do any Facebook post. The only difference is underneath it, rather than you just hitting post, it says schedule post, and you just pick your time or day to do that. So if you feel that doing social media would be a lot of work for you to do through the week, and you've got a busy job and you've got quite a few kids and you've just not got the time throughout the week to do it, all you would need to do is maybe at the weekend or one evening, set yourself a wee bit of time aside, like an hour, kind of plan out all your posts that you're going to do for the week, whatever it is you're sharing, and then you can schedule them, and then you just leave them to run all week, and then all it is for you during that week is just a matter of maybe going in and checking the odd comment that's on it, or if you're scrolling through Twitter to see if there's anything you've missed that day that you wanted to post. And it just takes a lot of the work away if you just spend that wee hour initially. This is just some useful tips for you. Like I've said, you don't need to ask permission from your school to set up any sort of social media. Parent Council is their own entity, so it's up to you what you want to do. But in order to build that good trust, and so that you're getting information from the school and the school see you as a really good, useful tool for engaging, then you really want to get their kind of blessing, for want of a better phrase, over your social media channels. So that's about you presenting to them, saying, listen, we're going to set this up, but please trust us because we've got it. We're going to keep control of it. We're going to run it really well. We're going to put a social media policy in place so we all know where we're at. And then if we're collecting information, we're going to put a data protection policy in place. We've got our code of conduct. So honestly, it's going to work out fine. So you want to kind of work with them on that. If you're collecting contact info, and I know parent councils do this a lot, see if you're asking families to email you their contact details. So it's like an email address, maybe a phone number, so then you can contact them. You really need to have a data protection policy in place, and you need to have a system where you're filing that. It doesn't have to be Fort Knox and password protecting everything, as long as it's on. So for instance, I'm on my device that has a password to get into it, and then I would have that information stored in a folder. Nobody else uses my device. It's only me that knows the password, so that's secure. But you cannot be having people's personal information coming in and out of the Parent Council email address, and you're letting everybody log on and look at that, and they're just sharing it. It's really quite reckless. So you need to kind of put a system in place. If you want any advice on that, then obviously you can contact me at any time and I'll talk you through it. I don't want to bore you tonight with like GDPR. What I also would say is, before you set up any social media, predominantly on Facebook though, include rules for your group or your page. You can always put out a wee post with that on it and just like kind of pin it to the top of your page, and then everybody knows where they're at. So it would be things like, we're not going to talk about parents by we're not going to talk about parents or kids or teachers by name. There'll be no cursing, there'll be no bad mouthing people. Whatever your rules are, there is no harm then posting that on your social media, and then parents that are maybe not even part of your parent council, they know where they're at, and your parent council know how they should be behaving as well if they're posting on that. And see, if people don't abide by your rules, don't be afraid to block them. That's what that button's there for. As long as you've laid out those rules and they were very clear to begin with, and people basically, when they sign up to be part of your Facebook group or follow your page or anything like that, if they've following you or joined up, they're like saying, yeah, we'll stick to those rules. See, if they don't, then use the block button. There is no shame in that. It is the Parent Council's page and it is entirely down to you how you use it. Just don't start blocking folk just for the sake of it though, if they've maybe got a different opinion for you. I mean, I would use it sparingly, but if there is somebody being really quite offensive, you're a volunteer, you're not there to take abuse from anyone. You're there advocating on behalf of your school, and you're actually doing that in your free time. I also want to highlight to you that I've noticed many schools do this on Twitter, where they have a private page, and it just goes back to that Facebook private group again. Understand why they've done it, but the problem is, if you're private on Twitter or on Facebook, it makes it very difficult then for parents who are maybe not in your wee group already to be able to see that information. So you think about all the new P1 parents that maybe came up in August there, and they're not part of your private Facebook group, or they're not on the Twitter yet. They won't be able to see that information as it's coming out. It's only going to be your actual followers or your group members. It also means that when you're trying to sing praises about your school and you are hashtagging it or wanting to tag, say, a local counsellor to say, oh, look at how wonderful we are, that won't work. Because if it's a private group or a private page, they won't see it. So a good example just now that I highlighted was the active travel team at Glasgow City Council. They're doing a campaign on TikTok just now about your active travel to school. If the kids on TikTok have a private TikTok page and they want to take part in that competition and they use the hashtag Glasgow Travel Team, it won't show up to Glasgow City Council because the profile's private. We've got around that though, and that we're saying, well, maybe the parents could go public on their TikTok and then share it that way. So then the kids don't have to take the privacy off. So I done that with my daughter. She created their video and then I just posted it on my TikTok. My TikTok's public because I don't use it. And then it meant that it kind of still showed up on the side for the travel team. So just remember that private's not always the best way to go. And I see a lot of schools and parent councils doing this. When you've got a document, try to actually share a link to that document. So if that's Google Drive that you use, or if it's a Microsoft link, it's always better to actually share a link where you can access the PDF of the document than a screenshot. Because what happens is when you screenshot a letter and you put it on Facebook or Twitter, the text is relatively a wee bit small. So most folk, if you're on your phone and you start zooming that up, it goes all blurry and it's a nightmare to read. And that's somebody with quite decent eyesight saying that. So if you've got really bad eyesight, I can just imagine that would be a headache. So that's not necessarily the best way to share documents. And I've already said to you about there are profanity filters on Facebook. If that's maybe a wee fear of setting up a parent council Facebook, there are settings there. So it's just about kind of looking through those settings and see what ones work for you. And can I just also say, because we get this a lot as a group, tagging someone on Twitter will not always guarantee a response, particularly if it's a sensitive subject, and especially if you're trying to kind of complain on Twitter. I know it works in retail, for instance. I've done it myself, where maybe you're not getting an answer from their customer service, and as soon as you go on, like for instance British Gas, you go on and you tweet them, they'll answer you like that, and it works a dream when it comes to retail. We do not work in retail. We're not part of retail, so it works very differently. And I see a lot of parents, some parent councils, going on Twitter, and they'll tag us as a group, and then they'll tag Maureen, and then they tag their counsellor. And I'll tell you right now, it's not the best channel to go down if you want to come to a resolution, because it can start breaking down relationships. And really, that's not the kind of communication you want. You want communication to be building your relationships and building trust, not breaking it down. So I can understand why people would do that, because you get to a point where you get really frustrated, and like Fiona said, she understands why parents would go to the press. So I totally understand it. But I would think for a second, what's your objective? Like what is it you ultimately want to achieve? And what I would imagine is that you want something resolved, or you want an answer to something, or you want some information. I don't think going on Twitter and tagging a bunch of folk is really going to get you that result. So maybe instead of doing that, you could like contact us. We can try and put you in contact with Fiona, or we email Maureen quite often ourselves to ask the question, and sometimes maybe we can get the response if we know that 4 or 5 other parent councils have asked us that. So there's other avenues that I would try before I go on Twitter and start tagging folk. But by all means, if it's like to share good news and share lovely photos and share a useful link, yeah, it's a great way, because you'll find more people will probably jump on that and they'll retweet it and they'll like it, etc. But it's very rare that when you start tagging people, if you're having a wee rant or something, that they're going to discuss it with you on Twitter, because it's a very public forum and it's probably not the place, particularly if it's a sensitive subject. And can I just give you one good bit of advice that I've realised through managing Glasgow City Parents Group social media? You don't need to respond to every single comment. I used to, and then what I found was I was using up a lot of my time having these conversations that were kind of going nowhere, because I always felt obligated to reply to every single comment under a post. Sometimes people are actually not even looking for a reply. They're just kind of maybe airing their own opinion or venting, or sometimes it's actually quite good to just let other parents like just discuss it, as long as it's just a friendly discussion and it doesn't get out of hand. But it kind of goes back to the scheduling the posts and things. Don't be frightened thinking that social media is going to take up a lot of your time. The more you use it, the easier it gets second nature. And when people are commenting under posts, unless it's something really offensive of that, it's okay to just let that comment sit. You do not have to respond to everything, because believe me, you'll never be off your phone or your device. So it is okay to just leave that sometimes. So that, if I remember, no, one more slide, forgetting what I've got. These are just a few wee points to remember. To increase engagement, if you're really wanting your parents and your families to kind of look at your social media channels as a source of information, and you want them to use them regularly, then you need to use them regularly, because there's nothing worse than if you're following a page, or you like a page or group, whatever it is, and there's nothing being posted. We all know that Facebook and Twitter, they tend to kind of put on your news feed the folk that post more regularly. So what ends up happening is your wee quiet social media channel just kind of disappears into oblivion, and people forget it's even there. And then when you do have something good to say, it just kind of gets lost in the trail of everything else because you've not been posting that regularly. So your name and your page is not easily recognisable. So try and post regularly. Don't mean like post 20 times a day, but I would say, see if you can try and kind of post 2 or 3 times a day. That would be ideal. And it doesn't always have to come from you. That can be like a retweet or sharing something else. But I would say, like, if you can try and post a couple of things a day, and that will just keep you ticking along, and it just makes it look like you're active and you are using social media, and you've not just signed up because it's the thing to do. And make sure you're sharing interesting and relative content. Don't just share nonsense for the sake of it, because again, people will just tune off unless you're sharing stuff that's actually relevant to them. So what I would suggest is, again, take a wee bit of time to go through social media and follow and like a lot of pages that are relevant to the content you want to share. So you've got like National Parent Forum of Scotland, Parenting Across Scotland, Parent Club, Education Scotland, any of your local community groups like Daily Peace or Peak or Urban Fox. There are masses of pages out there that you can follow and like, and that's where you would get some really good content from as well. On the subject of content, I'll kind of just skip a bullet point. The Parent Council is not there to air your own political views or your own personal views on certain subjects. Please remember that the Parent Council is a group, and that you're representing your school, you're representing your parents, you're advocating for them. So particularly with Glasgow City Parents Group, and I hope I do stick like this, I hope I don't maybe slip off the fence. I try to stay a bit middle of the road as much as I can. So whether I think X about something or whatever, I try not to air my own opinion too much. I try to stick to actually what education services are maybe doing or what's happening in the schools. So for instance, recently, like when I was sharing about face coverings now outside schools, that doesn't necessarily mean to say like I support that or I'm against it. Like I'm not on either side of that, and I'm not going to tell you that. I'm just sharing that because that was the new guidance that came out. Now it's being asked of us from the government that we wear face coverings outside schools. So you try and stay in the middle of the road as much as you can, because if you start siding on either way of that, that's where some problems can happen as well, because everybody's got their own opinions and we don't always necessarily agree. And I think you can maybe open yourself up for a lot of criticism as well. And it's just not the place for that. You've got your own social media where you can kind of push your own views out and whatever, but the Parent Council social media is not for that. I'll just jump back. I've got photograph permissions when posting. So just remember that as well. If you're going to post any photos of school kids or even of other Parent Council members or anybody like that, you need to have their permission. And I don't just mean possibly them saying, yeah, that's okay. You may actually want to think about having a forum that they would complete. And then you kind of retain that, because what has happened to me in the past through my job is that you can get permission from someone to share, like, so I used to do audio blogging for a charity, and I'll share that audio blog. They might change their mind like a few years down the line, say their life has moved, their circumstances have changed, they moved on, and they come back to you and say, actually, I want to change, like, I don't want that shared anymore. Obviously, I'd say, yeah, that's fine. So then I would kind of make a note of that you do not share that content. So you're kind of starting to get down this slippery road of trying to keep track of who's given permission for that photo, who's given permission for that. See, to save all that hassle and to save you worrying about trying to get photo permissions or trying to block people's faces out and kind of ruining your good picture, either use Canva to create an image that doesn't need photographs, or I then just share from the school's Twitters. So see if the school posts a really good photo of the kids, it's okay then to share from there, as long as their Twitter's public, obviously. You can either share on Twitter from there by retweeting it, or you screenshot it where you've got the full tweet, not just the photo, because as soon as they post that out on the public forum, then you can just share from there. What you can't do is save the photo and then go onto your parent council page and share it from there, because that's you back in the whole photograph permissions territory. So just remember that. And also when you do your permission slip, make sure it's very clear that it's either just for that one event that you're sharing that photo for, or it's to cover you for, say, 3 months or the school year. Because if you don't state that, and somebody signs that off and says, yeah, you can share that photo, and then say you get a second photo through and you decide to share that, they might come back and say, oh, I gave you permission to share that first photo, but not the second one. So if you're going to ask for photo permissions, you need to make sure you're very clear on what you're asking them for permission on. So that's why I think the easiest thing all round is just to always just share via the school's channels, and then you don't even need to go down that avenue. And again, if you're storing the photo permissions, that all falls under data protection. You need to make sure you've got a data protection policy in place, because you are saving someone's data, because you'll have their name and the date and everything on it. Again, big message, we should all know this, but I'm just going to reiterate it, that on any social media channels and even in parent council meetings, you should not be getting personal about staff, pupils or families. So no naming names, and no kind of trying to give away any identifying factors that somebody could maybe pick out who you were talking about. And like I've said kind of all through this, the more you use social media, the better you'll become at it and the less work it becomes, because it just becomes second nature. That's the way I feel about it now. Like, see me putting out like social media posts and creating images and stuff, it's as easy as like kind of typing up a text for me. So it's very easily done. But that only comes through years of doing it. I mean, currently I manage about 3 or 4 different profiles, because I volunteer for another organisation as well, and then I have my day job. So I'm kind of juggling about 3 or 4 different social media profiles. So it just becomes kind of second nature when you're at that level. And the more you do it, the more you get used to it. So hopefully that was of use to you, and you picked up something from it, and I wasn't just backing a whole load of rubbish at you. I can see that there's some questions. So what we're going to do is Kathryn will read out the questions, and then whoever the question is for, we'll just answer it as we go along on the call.
Okay, so hopefully I'm back on video and on audio as well. The first question from Sajad is about kids having lots of different teachers. So it seems to be there that Sajad is alluding to a situation where there's maybe not a great opportunity for the children to bond with any particular teacher, because there've been a number of different teachers teaching the class. And Sajad's asking, as a parent, can I express my concern? What I would say, this is a really good example of a question that should go direct to the school. This is something that, should never be posted on social media and should play out there, because what you have there is a situation. I don't know whether this is COVID related, because we are in some schools, finding enough staff is challenging. That's just the world that we're in right now. But sometimes in non-COVID times, there are reasons. Maybe somebody's off, and we have supply staff who come in, and they may be taken away somewhere else to, they might get a longer contract. So you can have turnover, but as a parent, if you are concerned about that turnover, the place to go with those concerns is to the school, and that should always be a direct conversation with the school. And I have seen this on my own local community Facebook pages being played out, where parents are complaining about this sort of thing. It doesn't resolve it. People just get an opportunity to vent, but none of it allows for an opportunity to have that resolved. The only place that you'll get that resolved is requesting a conversation with the head teacher to put those concerns across, and the impact on your child of those changes. But bear in mind that sometimes that is out of everybody's control. We don't live in a perfect world. We all want our children in our classes to have continuity of teacher, but sometimes circumstances go against us. So the only way that you'll get the answer to that one is to chat to the school. So that's the first question. The second one is, I'll let Leanne maybe read it and digest it, because I think it's one for her. The other questions that have gone on are about that issue that Leanne was alluding to, about using the school's images on Twitter. Anybody who appears...
that, because I think they've picked me up wrong. What I mean when I'm saying share it, I mean share it from Twitter. So what I'm saying, yes, the school has been given permission to share that photo. They've put it on their Twitter, or just say they have a Facebook. They've put it on their social media, so it's already in a public forum. Then you hit the share button or the retweet button and share it from there. Or I'll give you, while we're while Kathryn's chatting, I'll look up my phone and find an example. I tend to screenshot maybe a tweet. So I'll do this because a lot of schools are on Twitter but not on Facebook. So an example is Kilmarnock the other day had put up an image, Kilmarnock Primary, and they'd put, it was something really nice that they were doing. They were saying to parents, don't buy us gifts, just do us cards and posters. Don't spend any money as teachers on us for Christmas. And I just thought it was a lovely suggestion. I didn't copy the photo because then that would go against the rules. What I did was I screenshotted the full tweet so that you can clearly see it's Kilmarnock Primary, it's their tweet and the photos on it. And then I shared that on our Facebook because it's out there in the public realm. And they've already, there wasn't a child on that photo though, so it's maybe not the best example. But say there was a child in that image, they've already got the permission, they've shared it on their page, and then I'm just sharing it from their page. So that was what I was saying, the difference is about you saving the photo and then sharing it. Don't do that. But if you retweet it or you share it, then you don't have to go down that permission route, because it's already been posted on the public forum and you're sharing from there. But that only works if they have a public profile. If it's a private Twitter or a private Facebook group, you cannot do that. Hope that clears that up. And then Kathryn, you can add on anything you want to say there.
No, it was an interesting question, because somebody did actually email me that very question earlier this week, and I checked with a parent council member in Glasgow who's a friend of mine who puts a lot out on social media. And her response was that they, maybe they needed to think about getting permissions from parents for parent council events at some point in the future, but they hadn't done it. And I think it's a big ask for a parent council who are all volunteers to do that. So, she basically said our head teacher is fantastic at tweeting. She's prolific on Twitter. So once we knew that it was out there on Twitter, that we knew then it was fine to use it in our own social media. So we were always comfortable because the permission had been given to the school and the school had already put it out there. So that was her response. And also, if they were doing anything, maybe they were advertising uniform, they recycle uniform and they're always trying to get people to take the lost property away. So if they wanted to put a picture of a child on, she tended to put her own child's picture on, or the chair of the parent council was comfortable for her children to feature. So they were able to consent to that because they were the people uploading the content. But really, they sat behind the school's Twitter. Yeah. And I think, Fiona's looking to come in here, I think, to add to this.
Yeah, well, I've got a really good example that I'll just show you what I mean, just in case you still don't get what I mean about the screenshot. So for instance, here, right on Twitter straight away, let me turn that light off, it might not be as bright. No, can't really see it. Right, so we've got Carmyle Primary School who have shared a tweet and it's got 3 photos on it. They're cheering about the amount of fundraising they've done. What I would do then to put that on Facebook is I would just do my kind of screenshot method, whatever it is you do, whether you kind of press your 2 buttons, and I would share that screenshot then, because that's you just sharing Carmyle's public Twitter post that they put out. So I'm not saving a photo or anything, I'm just resharing it. And then obviously on Twitter, you just hit the retweet button and that's it. So you see how it's just a lot less hassle, it's a lot less risky, and parent councils don't even need to think about, oh, I need permission or anything. Fiona, have you get something?
Fiona,
yeah, the only thing
now?
I was going to just remind, that's fine when it's already been put up on a social media channel. What we have to be very careful about is if it's, I mean, not at the moment because clearly there's no events in schools, but we have had issues in the past when parents have been upset when we've had to say that actually you can't film. So for example, maybe like an end of term show, because what we have to remember is there will be children within that whole group setting that won't be allowed to be videoed. So that's something though that the head teacher should stand up and say at the beginning of an event. And one of the workarounds was when it became a bit of an issue in a nursery, was that we were able to actually film it. The nursery filmed it and then they shared the content, and they knew the children that weren't able to be filmed. What I will say is with you sharing Twitter, you'll also see in some, it's not, you can have the privacy setting, but you'll also see that some schools in nursery won't allow you to retweet, and you'll see the wee box, it's not highlighted. So that will show you that they don't want you to share it. And the only thing I would say is then I would suggest then that you didn't maybe screen grab that, because there'll be a reason why they would want it not to retweet. The only other thing I was going to bring in as well is that, you know, you alluded to Leanne, you know, just remember what you are publishing on your social media, because a lot of journalists, in fact, for example, the Glasgow Times now have 2 reporters that they are social media reporters, so they actually just trawl through social media posts, and that's their story. You know, we've all become, in this digital age, we've all become content editor or content contributors. You know, so I would just always bear in mind when you're posting something that potentially, and 9 times out of 10 will appear in a public forum. You know, so always just be aware of that. And if there's absolutely no reason that it's not going to appear in the paper, but just, you know, think about the language, think about, you know, as you say, if there's a political overtone to it, that you just have to be very careful what you're posting.
Yeah, and that goes for commenting under anything or liking anything. And I will give you a prime example, and it's from me. That just recently, about a month ago, one of the councillors was posting about how she wanted testing happening in schools. And while I kind of agreed with that message, I was trying to kind of say that I agreed with it because I wanted teachers to get tested so they could maybe get back to work, or they would know that they're, rather than having to self-isolate and they weren't ill, etc. That was my thinking. I liked it as our group, not thinking anything of it, because what big deal is that? The Glasgow Times, I think it was, the councillor went to Glasgow Times and then named us, saying that Glasgow City Parents Group actually promote, what's the word I'm looking for? They're actually backing our thoughts. And what I then had to do as a group was I had to then go under that quote and say, actually, no, we're not. Me as the chair had this, so I had to kind of then explain what I was doing. But it just shows you that it's not even what you post. It can be what you like. So if you're on your parent council page, obviously if you're on your own page, that's a different thing. But if you're on your parent council page, it's not even just about what comes off your page. It's also about what you're commenting under or what you're liking. And I'll tell you right now, councillors are all over that. So if you like anything like that is like remotely political, they will totally jump all over that, saying, oh, such and such a parent council, they're all for it. They've just already liked it. So just be wary of that as well.
And I think the other thing is a journalist doesn't need to come and ask for permission to take the quote. It's almost like it's fair game. It's in the public domain, so they can lift it.
Well, funny thing was when I commented under that saying
so
that we were not backing it.
Just, and not to put you off, that's just one of your sort of like just have.
Yeah, it's just being realistic. And funnily enough, when I put that comment under it, the councillor ended up deleting that original tweet because I think they realised actually we don't have Glasgow City Parents Group backing. So will we tackle this longer question then from Shona? So Shona,
Yeah.
first of all, sharing the guidelines to Facebook admins, don't have any guidelines because it's your page and it's up to you how many page admins you want. But what I would say is you definitely don't want too many, because it's that old adage, too many cooks spoil the broth. So really, I would probably say best practice would be to have your chair and your vice chair as admins. One of our members had that issue where they set up the group page and they were trying to be really fair, and they had put all the parent council members as an admin, and then what happened was one of the members posted something that was a bit inappropriate, and then they had to kind of backtrack and try and get a social media policy in place and such and such. And I just think that having 12 admins or even 5 admins, it's a bit much, and I'll tell you why. Because see, if they're not like kind of social media trained, or it's not really what they do maybe is a living, you can post something, like say you post something at 6 o'clock, your chair posts a message at 6 o'clock. What you'll tend to find then is another member might come on, and because they've not checked if something's already been posted and when it was last posted, they might literally post something at 6:01, and it's almost like it's just overshadowed what you have posted, and then it can start to cause friction. So I don't have any guidelines on it, it's entirely your decision, but I would say keep it small and tight. Does that answer? And do you have any rules about personal profile, meeting Facebook terms, service to check page or group? That would come under your code of conduct. For Glasgow City Parents Group, in our code of conduct, we've actually included, and our social media policy, we've included the point of don't be kind of speaking in a derogatory term of any of the members, and that also includes on your own Facebook profile. So whilst we have no control over what you do on your own social media, we can actually stipulate as a group, and so can the Parent Council, that you cannot discuss Parent Council business or Parent Council members on your own social media. So you can add that as a kind of bullet point. Obviously anything else they do on their own social media is entirely down to them, but if it's actually kind of about a member or about our business as a Parent Council, then you can add that into your code of conduct or your social media policy. So hopefully that answers that big 3 questions, I think.
Okay, there's one more here. I'm hoping that there's silence because I have people banging about in the room next door, causing the dog to become overexcited. So I was about to text them to tell them to keep the noise down. The final question was, you didn't mention that Parent Council pages that often feature on a school's website, and there's a reference there to blogs on Glow Scotland. Should this just be used as a pointer to social media? And also, if the Constitution states that the minutes should be made available, where would you recommend that those are posted?
So I can take the first one, Kathryn.
Okay, and then I'll take the second part.
One. So the first one, yeah, it is just a pointer. Glow is not social media. So obviously on the school's website, they can maybe just show parents where they would go to find the Parent Council social media pages. That's as far as I can kind of say on that. Your Parent Council pages then are just run through whatever channel it is you use. And what I would say is that what we do is Glasgow City Parents Group wear minutes, but then Kathryn can maybe then go into actual Parent Councils. Our minutes can be made available to anybody who requests them. They just request them through the chair rather than posting them on, especially if they're quite lengthy documents. But I think a Parent Council might work differently like that, because I remember in my old Parent Council chair days at St Bride's, we used to have a notice board out the front. They would print them off and stick them on. We obviously as a group work very different because we're not in a school and we're not really actually connected to a school. So Kathryn will be able to get into that in more detail, and maybe actually what's the best way of doing that nowadays though, Kathryn, because we're maybe not have the school notice boards like massive.
I think you use whatever methods you've got available to you. You know, schools have got things like Showbie and, you know, all these different means of getting messages out. I think it's a good question, because a lot of the time those minutes aren't actually shared or made accessible to the parents in the school, you know, and there is a, you know, the onus is on the parent council to keep those parents informed, because they are making decisions on their behalf. So if there's a school website, I know that in some of my linked schools, there's, you know, there's a lot of traffic goes through the school website, and it's publicised to the parents in the school that the parent council will be posting their minutes on that website. So you can go to the website and look at the most recent set. You can go back and look at the older sets of minutes. You could get schools to put out a text to say that a set of minutes, a new set of minutes has been uploaded. You know, it's easy to put those messages out. Again, it comes down to this having a good relationship with the school and working in partnership with the school, using every method that you can to get it out. So, you know, websites, Showbay, you know, other places that you can put them. You could put a link on Twitter to the, you know, you could send a link via Twitter to that document. I know that when I was on a parent council, it's quite some time since I've been on a parent council, but I always did a summary of the minutes that went in the school newsletter. So, you know, it might not be everything from the minutes. And then there was a link at the bottom to say, if you want to see a full set of minutes, refer to the school website, or if you would like to join our mailing list to receive them direct to your inbox. So, you know, using a whole variety, working with the head teacher, who is your main advisor to your parent council, to ask what's the method that works best for them in the school. And you probably want to go with the same method, because then you're going to get the maximum reach. But it is a good question, because it doesn't happen as often as it should.
So Shona, to answer your question was about the admins having a fake name, and that Facebook's kind of shutting down on fake profiles. That's really between you and your admins. You would need to kind of check that with them. I know that maybe some people will have a kind of slightly different name in Facebook for various reasons, maybe because of work and they don't want to be able to get searched up that way or whatever, but I can't really kind of tell you right or wrong in that. All I can say is Glasgow City Parents Group, it's me that manages the page, and that's not because I'm a control freak, although I'm a wee bit. That is just really because I'm the most experienced, and it's kind of second nature for me to do it. Whereas if any of the other members started posting on it, then I would need to kind of go through with them all the tools that we use. And I just, at the moment, we've just agreed as a group that we are quite happy for me to carry on doing what I'm doing. So again, you could have that conversation. If you're a social media manager, maybe that would be the perfect role for you to be posting stuff. I mean, I know that if I was on a parent council and you were saying, I'll manage those channels, I would sit back and go, you crack on. And then what they can do is they could just email you stuff that they want added onto it. So it's not that they're not involved. So it's just the discussion that you need to have about that. And in regards to your copyright of images, that's why I recommend using Canva. A lot of people, and I'm guilty of it sometimes as well, that we all go into Google and we Google something that we want an image of, and we'll screenshot it or we'll save it and we reuse it. That's where you can open yourself up for copyright. Canva, if you go on and you open up a free account in Canva, you create your own image. And so you don't need to worry about copyright, because that was you that created that. There are also actually some photos, actual photographs on Canva that you can use if you look for whatever topics it is. You just type in, like, say it's school or it's travel or something, and it will show you actual photographs, not just graphics. So it just depends what you're looking for. What I would say is generally the photographs are a wee bit American looking, so it might take a wee bit of searching through to find a kind of UK looking photograph. But that's maybe, if I don't have a photograph like that, then I'll just create a graphic where I just add on some different elements. So that's how you get around the copyright situation, and that's what I've always used, like with my work and stuff as well. And then you don't need to pay for any images, and then you don't need to worry about the whole copyright side of things. So again, hopefully that helps you out, Shona. I think that's us. Nobody else seems to be putting any questions in, but that's us kind of at our time up anyway, guys.